Hello, I'm Steph, aka Literati Medium, and today we're going to talk about what I read in January and what I plan on reading this month. So the first two books I'm going to talk about on here, I'm going to cover really quickly because I already talked about them quite a bit in my vlog video from last month, which you can check out here. The first book that I read in January was A Flicker in the Dark by Stacy Willingham. And like I said in my vlog, really good thriller. I ended up giving it 4 stars because I did guess who the killer was pretty early on. The next book that I finished in January was Project Hail Mary by Weir. This was a 5-star read for me. It's absolutely fantastic. I really have nothing bad to say about this book. It's funny, it's adventurous, it has you sitting on the edge of your seat, the characters are likable, and the ending, while not one that I personally would have chosen, ended up feeling 100% right. Plus, I also really enjoyed that the science was presented in a very clear and easy to understand way. The third book that I finished in January was Darkwalker on Moonshae by Niles. Tristan Kendrick is the troubled heir to a throne he doesn't want. However, only he will be able to gather the allies needed to defeat the darkness that's spreading across the land. So this was the first book published in the Forgotten Realms series back in 1987. I decided to start reading the Forgotten Realms series thanks to Liam from Liam's Lyceum, which I will tag down below. He's one of the guys that I play Booktubers and Battles with, which if you don't know about Booktubers and Battles, it's a Twitch channel I started where we play a quarterly Dungeons and Dragons game for charity, and then the viewers get to vote on what charity they want to support. If you want to see the first session, I do have that in my videos on my channel, or you can just check it out here. This book was really only okay for me. Considering the book was written in 1987, the main female character, Robin, ends up being really likable and is not overly sexualized, and by the end of the book ends up being pretty kick-ass. Tristan, for all his troubled heirness, is also really likable. I also enjoyed a lot of the side characters that were introduced. So I felt like the protagonists were definitely the strong point in this book. Which brings me to what I didn't like about it. The book spends way too much time in the enemy's head. The book itself would have been a lot stronger if the focus had stayed on Tristan and his group. And that way you could build the tension because the readers don't know what's going to happen, just like the group of heroes. And that actually would raise the fear factor of these villains, whereas when we're in their heads, we're just like, okay, these guys, they have no real character development. They're just like the BBEG, which for those of you that don't play D&D stands for the big bad evil guy. And because of that, you just lost a lot of tension in the story. I did not enjoy the audiobook for this. I do not recommend it. The narrator, she's not terrible when she's narrating. She made some choices with some of the character voices that really didn't suit the character. And other character voices she does great, but there were certain ones that just drove me absolutely crazy. And on top of it, she wasn't consistent with those voices. Also, there wasn't really a lot of audio balancing done, so I could always kind of tell when the audio clips were changing. That being said, I'm really glad that there was an audiobook at all because that's the only reason I was able to read it this month. Overall, I rated this book 3 stars, but it was a pretty low 3. Like, if I gave partial stars, it would be more like a 2.75. The next book that I read in January was The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. When Catalina Martin finds out that her sister is getting married to her ex's brother and that her ex is now happily engaged, she tells her family that she is bringing her American boyfriend to the wedding. A boyfriend that she doesn't actually have. When Erin Blackford, her work nemesis, volunteers to go as her date, she honestly doesn't know why, but she's too desperate to say no. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that fake dating tropes are one of my favorite romance cliches, and I know they're ridiculous and stupid, but I still really enjoy them because of the ridiculous situations these characters end up in. This book was a lot of fun, and the spice was pretty spicy, for the most part. I realize that this is a me problem, but there's a very particular word that Aaron uses over and over and over again, which is a major turnoff for me. So I would just be, listening to the audiobook, getting to the spice, being like, this is nice, and then that word. And it just completely pulled me out. Lena, unfortunately, also comes off as very immature. The fights she has with Aaron at the beginning of the book are just ridiculous because they fight over the stupidest shit. I was just kind of screaming at her the whole time to be like, use your words, but not like that. Though I do have to give props to Elena because she was so good at the enemies part of this enemies to lovers that I thought she was going to have to pull a miracle to make me want these two together by the end. And she manages to do it. I ended up giving this book 4 stars because of these 2 issues. I also do recommend the audiobook because it was really good. Though I do kind of wish the narrator had Lena speak with a Spanish accent when she was speaking in dialogue. Like, it would have been okay for the narration not to do it, but she's a character who's supposed to be from Spain. I felt like she should have a little bit of a Spanish accent. The last book that I read in January was Arcana Rising by Kresley. This is the 4th book in the Arcana Chronicles, so in an effort to not spoil anything for you, I'm going to summarize the first book, Poison Princess, instead. Evie Green has a great life until she starts having pretty terrifying hallucinations. Hallucinations, as it turns out, that are actually visions when her hometown in Louisiana is destroyed by an apocalyptic event. With everyone she knows and trusts dead, she has to turn to the one person she never thought she would, Jack DeVoe, a wrong side of the Bayou classmate. But she can't bring herself to fully trust him, even as he protects her as she chases around to try to find the source of her visions. They discover that there are others that have received the same call, and that Evie is part of an ancient prophecy to replay an ultimate battle between good and evil. However, there's no real way to know which side is which. So I first discovered this series back when Poison Princess was released, but I hadn't picked it up in a few years. I love a good post-apocalyptic story. Add tarot card mysticism and magical powers on top of it and sign me up. The 4th book picks up after a pretty cataclysmic cliffhanger from the 3rd book. I don't really want to talk about it too much because I definitely feel that this is a series worth reading and I don't want to spoil it. I have noticed that I find it really funny that my favorite YA series tend to be written by authors that actually specialize in paranormal romance. This book was good and made me remember how much I really enjoyed the series, which is perfect timing considering I believe the last book in the series is scheduled to come out this year. However, this book felt very transitionary to me. Not a whole lot happened after the wrap-up of what happened in book 3. For those of you that have read the series, I'm not complaining about what happened in the second half of the book. At all, but not a whole lot happened. And it's not helped by the fact that the book ends right when everything's starting to get interesting again. Because of that, I gave this book 4 stars. If you like this video and want to see more about what I post, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And tell me down in the comments if you've read any of those, or what your favorite book was in January. Alright, now let's cover what I'm going to be reading in February. So, my Book of the Month Club book this month is The Magnolia Palace by Fiona Davis. In 1919, Lillian Carter's life is turned upside down when her mother dies of the flu epidemic. Unable to find work as a model, she finds a job at the Frick Mansion where she becomes increasingly embroiled in the plots and scandals of the household. Nearly 50 years later, Veronica Weber gets dismissed from a Vogue photo shoot in the Frick Mansion, and she ends up discovering a series of secret messages that might not only end her financial troubles, but also solve a decades-old murder. This book sounds so intriguing, and I set in my 2022 reading goals that I wanted to read more historical fiction this year, so when I saw this as an option on my Book of the Month Club list, I had to pick it up. So, who said that they were going to read 2 Wheel of Time books in January? Oh right, it was me. You'll notice that of the 5 books that I read last month, none of them were Wheel of Time books. Also, only 2 of those 5 books weren't audiobooks. One of those books I was already about 60% of the way through before January started. I'm still really determined to read these books. As you can see, I'm a little over halfway in The Eye of the World, and I'm really liking it so far. What's funny is I'm preparing to do a book versus adaptation for the first season and the first 2 books. As I kind of rewatch the show as I'm going through the book, I appreciate the show a little bit more than I did the first time. I also finally was able to get the second book from the library. Sorry if I blinded you with the glare there. I'm really excited to continue this. I'm gonna definitely finish this one this month. I don't know if I'll finish this one this month, but I'm gonna try. And because of that, I won't have a tarot TBR card because, I mean, that's like 900 plus pages right there that I still need to read this month. If you've made it this far this month, leave me this emoji and let's see what stories tomorrow brings.